Before your Android app can make requests to web-based resources, you first need to add permissions to the app, and you should add code that checks whether network connectivity is available. I'm working in a project named Permissions, and I'm going to start with the Java code you need to check for network connectivity. I'll go to the main activity class, and I'll create a new method. I'll place it down here after update display and before the declaration of the async task class. I'll declare the method as protected and have it return a Boolean value, and I'll name the method isOnline. This code is pretty boilerplate. You'll find this example in a lot of places in the documentation and examples scattered around the web. I'll start with a class named Connectivity Manager that's a member of the Android.NET package. I'll name that CM, and I'll get a reference to it by calling getSystemService. And I'll pass in a constant of context.connectivityService. Now, getSystemService can return a lot of different kinds of services, so you have to cast the return value. I'll use a quick fix and add a cast to Connectivity Manager. Next, create an object called NetworkInfo. After typing the name of the class, I'm pressing Control Space to add the required import, and I'll name this object NetInfo, and I'll get its reference by calling the Connectivity Manager object's getActiveNetworkInfo method. Now I'm ready to check for connectivity. I'll use an if-else code template, and I'll set the condition as follows. First, I'll make sure that the NetInfo object isn't null, with NetInfo not equal to null. And then, after a double ampersand, I'll use the expression NetInfo.isConnected or connecting. And that checks for two different states. So, if that entire expression is true, that is, I have the NetworkInfo object and I'm either connected or connecting to the network, then I'm ready to make a network request, and I'll return true. And in the else clause, I'll return false. So once again, that's a standard bit of code that you'll see in a lot of Android apps to check whether network connectivity is available. Now I'm going to refactor my code a bit. First of all, I'm going to take this code that's executing the async task, and I'm going to extract it to its own method. I'll select those two lines of code, right-click and choose Refactor, Extract Method. And I'll call this new method RequestData. So now all of the complexity of how I'm working with that async task object is in its own method, and I can wrap this call in another bit of conditional code that uses the isOnline method. Above the call to request data, I'll add another line, and once again, I'll use an if-else code template. And I'll set the condition to calling my new isOnline method. And then I'll move the call to request data to within that conditional block. If the isOnline method returns false, I'll let the user know what happened. I'll use the toast class for this. I'll type toast and press Control Space to import the class, then call makeText, and pass in this as the context, a literal string of network isn't available as the text I want to display, an expression of toast.lengthLong as the duration of the message, and then after that entire call, I'll call the show method to display the message. Now this code looks like it should work, but there's a problem already. I'll run the code in the emulator, and watch what happens when I click the action bar item. The app crashes. And to see what's happened, I'll go to my logcat view. And I see that there's a fatal exception, and I see that there's a message indicating that I don't have appropriate permissions. In order to make network requests, and even just to check network connectivity, you must have granted the appropriate permissions to your Android app. And as with all permissions, you do this in the manifest file. So I'll go to the manifest file, and I'll click on the Permissions tab at the bottom. Then I'll click Add, and I'll choose Uses Permission and click OK. You'll need to add 2 permissions to your app. The first one is called Access Network State. I'll pull down the list for the permission name and choose Android.permission.accessNetworkState. Then I'll add another permission. I'll click Add and choose Uses Permission again. And for this one, I'll choose Internet. It's all listed alphabetically, so it's easy to find. Then I'll look at the resulting XML code. The Uses Permission elements are added under Uses SDK. They can be either above or below, but they have to be children of the manifest tag. Now I'll press Ctrl-A to select all, or Command-A on Mac, and Ctrl or Command-I to format the XML. I'll save that change, then I'll go back to my Java class and run the app again. I'll click the button, and I see that I'm successfully starting my asynchronous task. Now let's see what happens when there's no network connectivity. To test this, I'll go back to my home screen, and then I'll go to my application list and go to Settings. Under Settings, I'll click on More, and then I'll click to turn on Airplane Mode, which means that I'm interrupting the network connection. Then I'll go to my list of currently opened apps, and I'll reopen my catalog app. I'll click the action bar item, and I correctly see the message, Network isn't available. I'll go back to Settings. I'll turn off Airplane Mode. I'll once again go back to my sample app. I'll click the action bar item, and now once again, I'm executing the task. I'm not actually making an HTTP request yet, but my app is now architected so that I've taken care of all the possible error conditions. I've added the required permissions, and I've added code in the right place to make sure I have network connectivity before I try to go get data from a web service.